Bet the Board presents Stay Green. Stay Green is your first stop for all the metrics, matchups, and money-making opportunities at the track each race week. This is Stay Green, the NASCAR betting podcast. Here are your hosts, Todd Fuhrman and racing analyst Chris Werme.
Welcome into the Stay Green podcast, part of the Bet the Board podcast network. It's all NASCAR all the time, and we have 3 Elite 8 shows for you. As we know, the field has been pared down from 12 to a handful of the sport's best that can win a championship and forever end up in NASCAR immortality. I'm your host, Todd Fuhrman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, professional NASCAR bettor Chris Werme. And Wormser, it's rare we can say this when we head into the Elite 8 round of the NASCAR playoffs. These are arguably the best 8 drivers currently going in the sport, despite the carnival that NASCAR tried to create in the first 6 playoff races that we've had.
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme this week in all of the NASCAR podcasts is everyone was complaining or bitching about how many unknowns there was going to be in the schedule, adding Atlanta.
Us included.
Yeah. I mean, outside of a 200-1 shot we've taken in with Chase Briscoe, we haven't played any futures for the championship because we thought there were so many unknowns. And then here we end up with just the 8 clear best drivers. I think Bowman obviously could throw in him there, maybe with switch him out with Logano. But Larson, Bell, Reddick, Byron, Blaney, Hamlin, Elliott, what more do you want? I mean,
I think this is what every race fan should want, and that's reflected in the odds, which we'll get to in a second. For those folks who may be listening to Stay Green podcast for the first time, we'll do things a little bit differently from here on out with the focus and emphasis more on resetting the playoff field each and every week, a deep dive into some of the numbers where there may be some opportunity created, and of course, break down the playoff drivers and hit on a few that could upset the apple cart outside the playoff picture. So it won't be stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, unless theoretically we want to call our best bet portion of the program stage 3, but that'll be a little bit more short-lived. So you mentioned Alex Bowman, and I think this is a storyline that I didn't even follow until you shot me a text on Sunday, because I go from watching the end of the Roval where it looks like Bowman, for all intents and purposes, is going to be one of the 8. I switch my mind off of NASCAR back into the NFL action and trying to make sure I'm following everything going on there. And you go, oh, by the way, Joey Logano into the round of 8, Alex Bowman disqualified. I know we reached out to a friend of the program who tried to shed a little bit of light on it. He's obviously much smarter and closer affiliated with the sport than the two of us. But how shocked were you when that news broke, knowing that Bowman didn't even have to go out there and win the race? So yeah. I tip my hat to HMS for trying to cheat their way into the playoffs, but probably wasn't required to get the 48 moving forward.
Yeah, I don't understand why even risk that. That is so cut and dry, and it's apparent that they cheated because they aren't even appealing.
Yeah, they just know they got caught red-handed and figured, all right, we're going to wave the white flag.
Yeah, I was shocked because it's not like Bowman needed to go out there and finish top 3 or anything. He just needed to go out and have a normal day. He had scored a ton of points throughout the playoffs. Very consistent speed in his race car, had mistakes to a minimum. It's crazy that it comes to where a setup actually gets you DQ'd. It's very rare you see that. You might see a mistake. You could see a puncture in a tire that we've seen with Larson, at Kansas, and then Truex at Kansas last year. You can see mistakes on pit road. What you rarely see is a DQ or something that's just kind of blatantly obvious against the rules after they've gone through inspection. So I guess I would have expected it out of like a Briscoe situation where they had to throw a Hail Mary or even a Cindric. But even then, Cindric, I thought, was a top 5 car. He didn't take that chance. So just to see a car, especially when, gosh, you could have half the field could be HMS in the playoffs, that would have been pretty impressive in itself. And then with the potential of all 4 of them going to Phoenix would have been an impressive feat. So bummed for Alex Bowman. Unfortunately, someone made a stupid mistake there. I think as time will tell what exactly happened. Maybe they don't peel back the curtain enough to let us know that, oh, we thought we'd gain an advantage by lightening the car 17 pounds. When Hamlin was talking about how much it affected the car, I mean, it's like, 1/1000th of a second a lap, which, okay, a couple seconds throughout the race, a spot, 2 spots.
Yeah, if we're talking about full green flag conditions to try and do that. My favorite part in reading some of the NASCAR reporters talk about it, whether it's Jordan Bianchi, Jeff Gluck, Bob Pockrass, about how they let you refill the car, thinking that could be the weight. I mean, if you're going to do this the right way, try and figure out what you have sitting around the shop or that you can sneak into the car, whether it's a boulder into the trunk, whether it's something into the gas tank. But I mean, clearly with the 17-pound wiggle room or whatever it is that NASCAR allows, they weren't even in the same zip code for him to get disqualified and Joey Logano to be the beneficiary here.
Well, and the other thing, too, I don't think Hendrick has ever lost an appeal. So if they had actually appealed, I think it would have been from the 48 hitting the turtles and early in the race and kind of slamming his car down. Maybe something fell off, but you would have found
that on the track. You would
notice a piece of tungsten, right? Yeah. Or it would be big because 17 pounds is not light. And we don't even know the 17 pounds.
We don't even know. Yeah, exactly. We don't even know how much weight they actually lost, but you figured something large like that would be pretty noticeable on the track, or if somebody was trying to make those adjustments during a pit stop, maybe try and get it back in during your last green flag pit stop. I mean, you joke that this is why you love the sport, and this is what we encountered more often than not in the old days before everything was standardized. So clearly they knew what they were doing. They talked about appealing. They elected not to appeal, and it's Joey Logano getting in as the 8th driver. And when we look at the updated playoff standings for this, Kyle Larson, 33 points clear right now of the cut line. He has the biggest margin for error over the next 3 races, but it was only a few years ago when Kevin Harvick dominated the field all regular season, had a terrible round of 8, and wasn't able to get to Phoenix. Christopher Bell, 13 points clear. Tyler Reddick, 10. William Byron, 4. And then on the wrong side of the cut line, it's Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and Joey Logano. As far as the odds are concerned, when we begin to look at these prices, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the bottom line is this. I'm not making a case for Kyle Larson at 7-2 by any stretch of the imagination. I'd feel much more comfortable once he got to Phoenix to take a price of 3-2, maybe on the low end. I can't see him going off at even money. So if you feel otherwise, by all means, make a case. Otherwise, we can go through the other 7 playoff combatants.
Well, I'm not making a case for Larson, mainly because I don't think he's a top 3 car at Phoenix. I think that you could put other drivers ahead of him, and not a little ahead of him, significantly ahead of him. Now, could he go out there and get into the Final Four and win at Phoenix? Yes. I'm not saying that he can't. I'm just saying that I feel like 7-2 is a short price, because last year when he made it in, he was still plus 275 to win the championship. So I think if you like Larson, I would go ahead and wait, make sure he gets to the Final Four. And then you can probably even watch practice and qualifying, because at this point, I do think there'll be faster cars when they unload at Phoenix.
When we go to Christopher Bell, we know that flat short tracks have been his bread and butter. And this is a guy at 9-2. You'd like to see the price drift out a little bit further, but if Bell gets there, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that he will be the favorite at Phoenix. As far as his current form, I mean, 7 finishes, 7th or better over the last 8 races. Yes, he finished outside the top 30 at Vegas. So if that were to happen again, his number might drift a touch. But this guy has surpassed Tyler Reddick as the most consistent driver in the Cup Series this season, with 20 top 10s on his resume.
I would say if you're going to take a favorite, this is the guy to do it. I think he's probably – I think you can take him and say your explanation for betting him is he was good at Vegas last year. He almost won this race. He almost came back and beat Larson. I just went and watched that race earlier today again. I was nervous for Larson. Like that's how quickly Chris Bell was able to close on him in those final laps. With his ability to qualify well, I think he can pick up stage points. I think he can obviously make his way through the playoff or into the final. If he makes no mistakes, he could point his way through, no problem. But I also think that there's a really good chance he wins. Homestead is a place where he won last year. He's won at Martinsville to advance to the Final Four.
Each of the last 2 years, when he was on the outside looking in, he raised his level of play to some level.
So I think if you are interested in a future, I don't hate Chris Bell at 4.5 to 1. If he wins this week or at Homestead, which is always a possibility, you're going to see that price shorten up significantly. But also, I do think because he qualifies well, he's going to go out there and score stage points in the first stage, and that's a huge start to the week. It's a huge start to the week and to this round of 8.
The proverbial ship that has sailed on us, that of the 45 car and Tyler Reddick, who, when we talked about him going into the Roval, had his number widely available in double digits. We see him installed as the third favorite. Current form, though, not great for Tyler Reddick. It felt like a broken record in the middle of the season where it was, hey, look, Tyler Reddick had another top 5. Tyler Reddick had another top 10. But he's finished 11th or worse in 5 straight, the worst stretch of the season in terms of overall finishes for the 45. We know that can change at a moment's notice and a snap of your fingers when we look at Vegas, where he's been good. Homestead, once that high line comes in. Tyler Reddick at 5 to 1, worth some consideration, or would rather take the wait and see approach?
Yeah, this is a wait and see, mainly because, I still think I would put rank him probably third at Phoenix. And I just want to see some consistency. We're not talking about he's been up and down. I mean, this is, he went on a run in the middle of the season for 11 races. His average finish was 5.5. Since then, since his win at Michigan, his average finish is 18.5. So that's significantly different. And we're not talking about, we're missing here and there. I mean, finishing in the 20s in races where you should be a little bit more competitive, they got to clean that up. And I don't know if this is one of those things where same thing with Truex last year, you win the regular season and then you just kind of struggle and you just haven't had all this adversity throughout the entire season. And it maybe starts to weigh on you, weigh on your team. Not to mention there is this whole thing going on in the background with 23XI. I'm not saying that has a direct effect on him, but it's part of the playoffs and it's in the background of everyone that's working for that program. So at this point, I think you can wait and see Reddick upside. I thought he was long run the best car in the spring. And, if he can obviously pick off a win, that'd be great for him. But I still don't think he'll be the favorite for the playoffs, even if he wins this week. So again, wait and see.
Denny Hamlin, I mean, current form, again, not great by any stretch of the imagination. We talk about adversity. I mean, this guy has navigated through it as much as anybody during the last phase of the playoffs. You texted me in the middle of stage 1, said, the 11 may have himself in a world of hurt here. Credit to Denny. He's been able to overcome that. He's been pretty outspoken, saying just get to this series of tracks, these 3, and he likes his opportunity. But again, going to Phoenix and a price tag of 6 to 1, I'm not sure I'm running to the window to try and make a case for Denny or to feel like I'm stealing anything given the way he's currently being priced in the market.
Yeah, throw in the fact that Vegas he has struggled at. This is we're not starting at Martinsville. We're starting at Martinsville. This 6 to 1 might seem a little bit more appetizing, but Martinsville is going to be that last race and in this round. So Vegas is a place where he hasn't particularly qualified well. I don't see him going out there and finishing top 3 in stage 1. He might have to steal a little bit of track position. Could he unload this week fast? Yes, I just don't anticipate it. Denny's really good at calling a shot. He admitted to himself that Vegas has just kind of they haven't quite hit the setup. So I think at 6 to 1, again, wait and see. I don't have him top 6 as drivers at Phoenix as well. So I remember when we were discussing Hamlin a couple weeks ago, kind of on the side, not on the podcast, about, hey, when do we pull the trigger on Hamlin? He was kind of that 8 to 1. And the first question that you asked was, can he win at Phoenix? And it's like, yes, but he's got a long way to go. So just the fact he's advanced, you're seeing a little bit of a reduction in price. I think that 7 or 8 to 1 is probably more fair market value on Denny. So I'm going to still wait on 6, especially with Vegas not hasn't been his forte the last couple of years in this car.
Pair of drivers and shop around if you're interested in either of these guys, because I've seen these numbers differ as high as 8 to 1, as low as 6 to 1, that being William Byron and Ryan Blaney. William Byron, quietly put together tremendous finishes in the last 3 races. Second at Kansas, third at Dega, third at the Roval, 10th at Vegas here in the spring. He scored a series best 190 points in 5 races on 1.5-mile tracks so far this season. Ryan Blaney, last year's champion, looking to try and defend that. Current form-wise, 3 top 10s over the last 4 races. We can throw out the 39th place finish at Talladega, was third at Vegas in the spring, and scored the most stage points of 54 amongst all the remaining playoff drivers. Either of these guys intrigue you, knowing that if Ryan Blaney gets to Phoenix, he's going to be as difficult and out as anybody, and William Byron just quietly hanging around trying to regain the form that he had early in the year when the races seem to mean the most deep into November.
Gosh, if I had to pick one of the two, I would say I like Byron just a little bit more. I think we've seen more speed out of him in the 1.5 miles. I haven't seen Blaney look fast to my eye, since that practice at Darlington, and he made it 2 laps in the race before he was wrecked out by Truex. So can he remember, still at this point last year, Blaney was like 20-1. He was not even an option to win this thing. It wasn't until we saw a little bit of speed here last week this week last year in the playoffs, and then at Homestead when he was a rocket and then went on to just trounce the field at Martinsville. So I still think there's some room for improvement with Ryan Blaney in order for him to go win this championship. HMS is a little different. I think that they've flexed their muscles these last few weeks. I do think that William Byron can go out there, run solidly, in the top 3 these first couple of weeks, go to Martinsville, try to get it done in advance. And we've seen him qualify well at Phoenix, and I think he's won there. So obviously Byron can get it done. So I would say at this point, I do like Byron's 13-2 price more than I like Blaney's. But if Blaney turns a corner again, this guy has to be one of the favorites, along with Chris Bell, if we get to Phoenix.
The 2 long shots, if we want to call them that, both former series champions in Chase Elliott and Joey Logano. Chase, again, current form, 3 top 10s, last 4 races. The outlier, a 29th place finish at Talladega. Average finish of 12th in the playoffs, 12th at Vegas in the spring, 4 consecutive top 10s at 1.5-mile tracks. It's actually the longest streak in the Cup Series going right now. And then there's Joey Logano, who has to feel he's got a new lease on life, being gifted. Although, look, you have to earn it to get up to 9th place with the Alex Bowman disqualification to get in. 1.5-miles, though, however, have not been the bread and butter for the 22 team this season. They've qualified well. They just haven't been able to get the finishes.
Yeah, Chase Elliott, hey, you've been consistent. I don't know that consistency without speed is going to work to get to the Final Four. I think you're going to need consistency with speed. We just haven't seen Chase Elliott go out there and pass anybody. Now, I will say last week at the Roval, man, you could make a strong argument he was the best car. And I thought that was props to 2 teams or 3 teams that executed at a very high level. Denny Hamlin, that 11 team after the issues, the 45 and Tyler Reddick, and then you could say the 9 of Chase Elliott. They restarted deep, and they had to work their way methodically through the field in order to make the playoff or make this next round of the playoffs. I thought that was very well done. However, that is one of his very best tracks at the Roval. So Vegas has also not been kind to Chase Elliott in the past. Gosh, I think you can get to the round of 8 with consistency and just great average finishes. I don't think you can make it to the Final Four just being consistent. I don't think the speed is there like it is with a 24 and the 5 when it comes to that Hendrick Motorsports camp. And Joey Logano, I tweeted out he's just got that dog in him, and then he didn't make the round of then he didn't make the final 8, and then he just claws his way back.
He found a way by hook or by crook, found a way to get in.
I swear, Logano, watching Logano a 1.5 miles, I was like, well, let's qualify really well and just make it hard as hell to pass. Like we don't have a lot of speed. We're missing a little bit of something when it comes to handling. So let's just make this car really wide and see if that'll work. I don't think it will, because if you lose track position, it is so hard to drive your way back up to the front without taking 2 tires or putting yourself at a slight disadvantage. So although Logano, I do anticipate to qualify decent, I don't expect him to be able to regain track position if he were to lose it without putting himself at a disadvantage. So I think it's going to be a long 3 races for Logano, but a short track, he still track position there at Martinsville, and he could easily win that race. And then he would be a contender, in my opinion, at Phoenix.
After all of that, I'm trying to decide if I can get myself to the window to try and create a little bit of exposure on Christopher Bell or William Byron in some capacity. Haven't pulled the trigger yet on any of the drivers. It feels unusual for us not to have anything active in our portfolio as it pertains to trying to identify a winner going into the final 4 races of the season. You can follow Chris on social media at Chris Werme 15. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there as well. Most importantly, for all things podcast related, be sure to follow the Bet the Board account at Bet the Board Pod and sign up for the Bet the Board podcast newsletter. So Wormser, from the championship reset into our breakdown of the 1.5-mile tri-oval at Las Vegas this weekend. It's a surface that we've seen have a little bit more wear and tear over the years for whatever reason, as the winds come whipping through the desert and creates a little bit of an abrasive surface. This is a spot where a true driver goes out there and wins, and there's a reason that Kyle Larson is the shortest price on the board, given how Larson has dominated here at Las Vegas recently. 3-1, more or less, the prevailing rate. Many a shop shorter than that. Last 3 races at Vegas, first, second. Started all 3 of those races from a top 6 starting position. And the bottom line is this: if there wasn't a late caution in spring of 2023, you can make the case that Larson is a 3-time winner, 3 races in a row in Las Vegas. But can this number possibly get shorter, even if Larson has the best car in practice and puts the damn thing on the pole?
I don't think it can get shorter.
May not get longer either, though. So
yeah, I just think that you're getting 3-1 on Kyle Larson this weekend. That's just the price. It doesn't matter if he pulls it or he starts dead last. You're getting 3-1 on Kyle Larson. So it's just a matter of, after practice and qualifying, do you want to add him to your portfolio or not? I'll say this: I'm gonna pump the brakes on Larson here, because yes, statistically, from a stage break perspective, from a race finish and perspective, laps led, yes, he's dominated all those things. But there's been other cars that have been, I thought, better at times. When you were to say, like, oh, he swept all the stages in the last 2 races. Yeah, okay, but Tyler Reddick came from like 4 or 5 spots back in stage 1 and stage 2 and almost beat him. So it was one of those races where if the race was a little longer in the spring, I think Tyler Reddick wins it. And if there was another corner last fall, Chris Bell wins. So, I 3-1 is short for a guy that he just had an issue at Kansas and, kind of limped around all day, barely on the lead lap. And I think he finished multiple laps down. So, yes, Larson is going to be stout. He's going to qualify well. He's going to be up there, but he's going to have to run a perfect race. And he ran perfect races at both the last races. Now, he did slip up last year in the fall, this race last year, and he got a very timely caution. So without that, I don't think he has that perfect, clean scorecard of sweeping all the stages. I think he probably finishes 10th in stage 2. But, man, 3-1's a short price. I don't think you're going to see anything higher, and I don't think you're going to see anything lower. So no reason to bet him now.
Larson's teammate, William Byron, 7-1-ish, more or less. The prevailing price tag, 3 straight top 10s at Vegas. Finished 7th or better in 3 of the last 5 trips here. Streak of back-to-back, 100-plus driver ratings broken with his run here in the spring. I mean, he's typically put the car up front as far as overall qualifying is concerned. And when we look at how he's performed at 1.5-mile track, 2nd at Kansas, 2nd at Michigan, which I know is a 2-miler, but I'll throw it in there anyways, and 3rd at Charlotte. William Byron, 7-1. Interested or wait and see?
Well, I think you have to wait and see, because Larson's going to be there at 3-1. I don't see Larson going off at 3-1 and Byron going off at 5-1. I can't see that happening. So I think you're little downside risk here waiting on William Byron. I'd rather see practice and qualifying. Even if he pulls it and Larson qualifies in the top 3, there's no way that Byron's going off much shorter than the 7-1 price, especially if you're shopping on race day. You'll be able to find this price on William Byron. the only way you see a shorter price on Byron is if he looks that much better than Larson, and Larson goes to a backup and he goes off at 5 or 6 to 1. Well, in that case, then I like Larson. So
that's how I was saying. You're betting Larson on the drift.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, Byron's just not a play for me. I think he'll be strong all day, but I don't see him kind of driving up to the front or having a car that just kind of, could start 6th or 7th and just work his way up to the front in the first stage. It's going to be, if he gets some track position, works his way up slowly, I don't think it's just going to be one of those, unbeatable cars that no one passes.
Christopher Bell, we've seen his odds shorten a touch from 8.5, 9 to 1, now more or less in the 7 range. Been the model of consistency at 1.5 mile tracks. We know he won the Coke 600 in that rain-shortened race Memorial Day weekend. 33rd here in the spring, but did come home second last fall, started from the pole, and 5th in the spring. He has been really, I won't say the gold standard per se, but he has been very good at this track type and maybe oftentimes overlooked given how well some of the other drivers have performed.
Oh, I would agree. I think that Chris Bell has been extremely consistent this entire season. He's kind of taken over for Tyler Reddick. It's just that guy that tends to finish in the top 10 week in and week out. He did have a little bit of a blip with a 14th place finish at Watkins Glen. But if you look at his last 8 races, his average finish of 5.5, he tends to qualify well. And he did have some issues here in the spring. Blew a right rear tire, was never really a factor. Well, let me take that back. He blew a right rear tire, didn't have that much damage, and was able to work his way back up into the top 7. So, and then he did it again. Then he spun out again, and we never saw the top 10 again. So, I certainly think there's speed in that car. He could have won this race last year. Was solid at the Roval, kind of a quiet weekend, nothing spectacular in practice, nothing spectacular in qualifying. But when that green flag drops, that 20 car moves forward. We did play a little bit of this above some 7 to 1. I don't like the 7 to 1 price, but anything above that, you get that 8.5, 9, 10. There was even an 11, I think FanDuel opened. That's at 9.5, I think, on FanDuel. But I do like Chris Bell over 8.5 to 1. So we did play a little bit there.
Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, 8 to 1 for Hamlin. Tyler Reddick at 10. Denny won here back in the fall of 2021, but since then hasn't finished better than 5th. And the other thing working against the 11 is he hasn't qualified overly well. The last 4 trips here, he started 12th or worse in every race, has compiled a driver rating of 100 plus in 3 straight. So we know he's been able to pick his way through the field. Does he get a boost from the new playoff lifeline? I mean, for a guy that says 1.5 mile tracks are where he's at his best, in my opinion, Homestead is the spot you're going to want to make a case for the 11 more so than Vegas, given the way he's being priced.
Yeah, Denny's just kind of missed it here lately. And it admittedly, I do think Denny is very honest on his podcast, and he's clearly missed it. His average start is 18.3, but his average finish is 9.7. Where Denny's been really solid, and when I say that, I'm talking about the last 3 races, so in the fall and then both races last year. He does have the second best average running position here, so it's not for lack of speed in the car. I just don't think he makes a lot of passes. A lot of the times where Denny's been able to work his way through the field, it's come with a little bit of pit road strategy. It's come with him stealing some track positions, kind of making that stick and not making mistakes. But it's not one of those guys where he started 20th and it was just picking off cars left and right, driving to the front. There was a little bit of strategy involved. So I do think that he'll be able to do that even if he qualifies poorly. But because of the poor qualifying, go ahead and wait on this 8 to 1. Again, you have this guy named Kyle Larson that's going to eat up a lot of that win equity. And so at this point, you have to be a little selective on where you think the market could go on some of these drivers. And I don't think Denny Hamlin's going to get much shorter than 8 to 1. But here's the thing. If Denny does throw it on the pole or does like his car and he goes off at that 5 or 6 to 1, I am okay pulling the trigger on the 11 car at that price if he's comfortable after practice and qualifying.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, Denny, if he puts together a good practice session and good qualifying, he will no doubt be formidable Sunday afternoon at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Tyler Reddick, who we mentioned earlier, again, a guy who hasn't qualified all that well. 2 of the last 3 trips to Vegas, he started 18th or worse. Spring race, though, finished second in both stages, drove home second, And as far as Vegas overall, 5 finishes of 8th or better in the last 6 trips that he's made to Las Vegas. Tyler Reddick, 10-1, buy now, wait, or what are some of your expectations for the 45?
Yeah, 10 is, that might be something we think long and hard about. I do think Reddick was the best car here in the long run. I think you could say that about kind of all the Toyotas. I think maybe the Chevys are set up a little bit different for like maybe 25 or 30 lap runs, and then I think the Chevys kind of fall off a little bit, and that's when the Toyota have a little bit more downforce, and they're able to make up speed in this long run. The interesting part about Tyler Reddick's speed earlier in the season was it was on the bottom. And normally you think Tyler Reddick could be ripping the top, and that's where he's going to make his speed. But he was right on painting that white line in both ends of the track and was able to make up a lot of time on Kyle Larson. But I also think the field's made up a little ground on Tyler Reddick. He went from being the most consistent driver week in and week out, showing speed, qualifying well, to just kind of in damage control. And, this could be a great reset for him, getting into 2.5-mile tracks, one where he excels massively at Homestead. And then also coming off a place where he had he finished second in both stages earlier in the year and finished second in the race. So this could be kind of a turning point for Tyler Reddick. So 10-1 is, man, you could see that number shorten up if he looks good in practice and qualifying. This number could get to like a 6-1 price, maybe a 7-1. So if you want to get Tyler Reddick, I don't think 10's a terrible number because I do think we could see him go off a little shorter.
Ryan Blaney starting to figure things out a little bit at Vegas. Back-to-back top 6 finishes here. Prior to that, 3 straight finishes, 13th or worse. Driver rating has been good, and you wonder if his 10-1 price, that is the going rate throughout the market right now, is warranted, or he's a guy that you could wait on. Because for me, when I look at the 12 car, I'd be intrigued if that number drifted out to 14 or 16 and he looked just average in practice.
Yeah. He'd have to look really good for this price to shorten. The Fords have not been the same at this track in this car. So I do think he'll run solidly, but I think you're going to see a better number than 10. I do actually think that there are some better numbers out there than 10 currently. I think FanDuel looks here. He's a 14. I don't hate that number at 14, but I think it just goes to show you that there's more pressure on him to become a little bit longer price than there is guys, betting that down. So I think he'll run solidly, but I don't think that there's any reason I don't see him being a threat to win the pole or qualifying in the top 3. So I'd again wait on 10-1.
You mentioned the 9 car of Chase Elliott and how he hasn't shown race-winning speed. Well, Vegas hasn't exactly been his favorite track either. 3 straight finishes now, 12th or worse, just 1 start inside the top 10 over his last 5 trips out here to the desert. Also hasn't registered a driver rating better than 96 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway since the fall of 2021. I can't imagine you're going to make a bullish case for buying Chase Elliott before we see these cars unload.
No, I am not. He doesn't tend to qualify well, and he hasn't really finished well here.
Those aren't exactly a great combination for those folks new to betting NASCAR. If you don't qualify well and you don't finish well, typically not a guy that you want to have a lot of money invested in.
Yeah, this just goes back to speed. Just haven't seen the same speed out of this 9 that we've seen out of the 5 and the 24. So until we see that, I mean, Chase Elliott used to be the favorite in races. When he went and won at Phoenix, he went off at plus 225, had to start in the rear and stayed plus 225. So to see him at 16-1, I think books probably got this right. If he does look good, it'll probably be long run. I don't anticipate him making a lot of mistakes, but he would have to run a perfect race, in my opinion, to finish in the top 3, especially with the speed we've seen in that car. So again, a guy I trust maybe in other markets, maybe top 5s or in matchups, but not someone you want to, I want to take in the outright market at this point.
And I can't imagine you're going to want to take this guy in the outright market either. Joey Logano prices shy of 20-1, although there are some slightly better numbers that are actually out there. Started from the pole, though, in 2 of the last 3 races here, which, look, may give us some opportunity if we want to bet against him in head-to-head matchups. But over the last 7 trips, driver rating isn't good, average running position. A lot of the other underlying metrics don't suggest that 22 is going to have a chance to win this race unless it's an outlier come Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not high on Logano. I think he's someone you probably fade if you're given the opportunity. I think he could qualify well. That's not a given. I think that there's other guys that I anticipate qualifying much better. And if he does qualify well, he better keep that track position, because if he doesn't and he gets back there in that dirty air, the 22 is not gone from the back to the front under green conditions. The only time he's done that is in some sort of 2-tire strategy, or whether it's short pitting or catching a lucky caution. That's the only way that the 22 has kind of stayed up front all year. So definitely more of a fade. The difference in Chase Elliott, I don't think either one of them are going to win the race, Chase Elliott and Joey Logano. But Chase is a guy I would back in matchups, and Logano's a guy I'd be looking to fade in matchups.
It makes sense. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and when it comes to Logano, they're going to try and figure out every unique wrinkle and or strategy call they can make to pick up track position if they don't show speed. And there's no reason to believe that suddenly speed is going to appear magically for a team who hasn't exactly been at their best a mile and a half.
It happened last year with his teammate. So if all of a sudden,
Well, Ryan Blaney did show speed at a mile and a half, though, when he won the Coke 600 last year.
That's a good point.
So somewhere it had flashed. It wasn't consistent, more so than we've seen from the 22, at least getting his car up front when the race starts and staying up front with raw speed.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's also a strong argument for Chris Bell, I would say, both this week and for the championship, as he was dominant in that race. So the Coke 600. So that's a good point. Yeah, we did see flashes of brilliance out of Blaney. We have not seen flashes of anything out of Joey Logano, other than a lot of gas when he won at Nashville. That was just the most impressive thing ever. The worst bet we've ever made all year on an outright that just somehow cashes when we absolutely did not deserve it. We actually deserve better because we had a lot on Hamlin at that 8-1 price.
World's largest fuel cell. That should have gone to the NASCAR hauler and been inspected for defying what we thought was going to be humanly possible and or automotive advantages. We're not elitist though around these parts though, Wormser, and when we preview all the playoff drivers, the 8 that are most relevant that the broadcast is going to focus on come Sunday. Anybody on the outside of the playoff picture looking in that you think can play a role in determining the outright winner, or somebody that you may want to isolate in matchups either pre-week or that you'll have your eyes on during qualifying?
Well, I think there's 3 drivers that I've kind of heard some rumblings about on social media. That's Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, and then I think Bubba Wallace needs to be mentioned. Chastain, he's been really good at Vegas in the past. It's almost spotty where he finds his speed, but he's also a guy that if he does take 2 tires, was voted the hardest guy to pass. So you do have a little bit of optionality at Vegas. If you do get 15 or 20 lap runs and you have another 10 lap run to the finish, you could find yourself taking 2 tires. And if that's the case, you better be strong out front. And I do consider Ross one of those guys. That's how he was able to kind of steal some track position at Vegas with a little bit of a flip, at Kansas with a little bit of a flip of a stage that kind of solidified him up front. Kyle Busch has been in the mix, kind of racing around in the top 10. Also earlier this year, his RCR teammate in Austin Dillon had a really solid run, probably the best he had all year. So I'll be interested to see if Kyle Busch can come home to Vegas here. This price is 18-1, both Chastain and Kyle Busch. I haven't rushed to bet those. I do think that a playoff driver wins this race. I don't think we'll see what we've seen in the past where we've seen non-playoff drivers win. I do think playoff drivers will win. But maybe keep an eye on this Ross Chastain or Kyle Busch. Maybe there's some other markets, whether it's top 5s, top 10s, or some matchups where you could be looking to play. And also Bubba Wallace. I think we have to, give him some credit. This guy's been very consistent the last few weeks. I thought he had a great race at the Roval. And he's coming back to a 1.5 mile track where his teammate was arguably the best car or the second best car here in the spring. And I do anticipate that 23 team to have some speed. So if you're looking for maybe a top 10 or just maybe a little bit of a longer shot, I do anticipate Bubba to be around.
No mention of the Marty party, getting it all figured out over the next 4 races.
I got no
that,
clue with Marty. Going back and watching old races. So I watched the race from the spring, and then I watched last year's fall race, and Truex is all over the top 5, like just making passes. Unfortunately, they made a bonehead mistake last fall, staying out on 10-lap tires. They went to the back, but he was able to drive his way back through the field. I mean, it was very impressive what Truex can do. I just don't know what's going on. Just very inconsistent. Last week just completely punting and qualifying and grinding out a day. I don't know. Truex has been baffling this year. I'd love to see him get a win. I think he has a better chance at Homestead than he does here at Vegas, but hard to pinpoint where this car is going. You could look like a genius betting on him in every matchup, or you could look like a genius fading him. I just don't know. I just don't see him running 12th. He's either going to be top 5 or he's going to just be 18th or 19th and just not a factor.
Yeah, the 19 has been rather polarizing, and for the most part, when you look at his recent outcomes, not exactly something to write home about by any stretch of the imagination. The third at Kansas, the one outlier. If we go all the way back to Pocono, it's the only time he's finished inside the top 10 over his last 11 races. You can follow Chris on social media at Chris Werme15. You can follow me there as well at Todd Fuhrman. Most importantly, for all things podcast related, be sure to follow the Bet the Board account at Bet the Board Pod. And Wormser, Stage 3 by default becomes the best bet portion of the program. I know we've bemoaned the fact that we've had a much more limited offering at our disposal, trying to force win prices, top 5s, top 10s. But given the fact that the race is out here in Las Vegas, and maybe it's a sign of things to come with only 4 races remaining on the schedule, we had a little bit more of an extensive head-to-head matchup menu offered to us by a national sports book. Our discussion before the show leads me to believe that may be the direction that you want to trend in, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, shout out DraftKings for posting 3 matchups. That's real helpful. We're gonna actually fade a playoff driver with a
40-cent straddle, nonetheless. I mean, you may as well hang 18 matchups at that and just go to a 50-cent straddle.
We're gonna fade Joey Logano here with Ty Gibbs. I think old Tyrone is a little bit undervalued for some of the speed he's been showing on 1.5-mile tracks. I was texting with Ryan Stevens earlier today from wintherace.info, and he asked me this question. He said, name the driver who has run the highest percentage of their laps inside the top 10 this season at Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, and Darlington.
This sounds like NASCAR nerd trivia. Even our listeners that love the sport aren't going to know this kind of stuff.
I had no idea.
Shocking.
And you would never guess that Ty Gibbs has run 87% of his laps in the top 10 at those 4 tracks. So that shows me that this kid can kind of hang around in the top 10. And we're going to bet against this Joey Logano guy, who I don't think will be hanging around the top 10. So Ty Gibbs minus 130 over Joey Logano. That's at Caesars, I believe.
Yep, that is indeed the price at Caesars William Hill. And as we record here on Wednesday, we can only hope that number is still widely available when the show goes live.
Yeah.
For our listenership, we will not bet into it, and so our listeners can have a crack at it, but all bets are off come Friday in terms of what that number will actually do. So want to wish everybody the best of luck. It's time to cherish what remains on the NASCAR schedule. It's a grind for us as handicappers. We know it's a grind for drivers, but they get paid to be out there at the track each and every weekend. And Worm, I'm just excited that we have 4 theoretically bettable tracks going forward after I think you and I had a grand total of maybe 4 bets during the last phase of the playoffs. We had 1 outright at the Roval. I'm sure you had some live stuff. Talladega, you were in wine country. You're doing whatever the hell it is you do while you have a few days and hours remaining of being a free man without children in your household. Yep. And then Kansas, most of those drivers, you could have thrown a blanket over the field in terms of identifying the comers and goers. Hopefully Vegas gives us a little bit of opportunity. And as a result, want to remind all the listeners to be checking the Bet the Board podcast website. If we have a head-to-head matchup or something that we're adding that's widely available, we will post it to the website on race day for all of you guys and girls to bet. Anything else that you would like to share before?
No, I'm just looking forward to these next, 4 races, because I think that, relative to the last 6 races here in the playoffs, this is the best stretch that we've seen probably since earlier in the year. So, it's time to make some money, hopefully get our money in good. And obviously you still need the chips to fall your way. There's still an element of luck in this NASCAR betting, but the best thing you can do is just get your money in good and enjoy the race. So I'm looking forward to doing that this next month.
Final order of business, pre-race poll. What time will you be going live on Sunday?
Yep. So apparently at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 o'clock Eastern every Sunday, there's this show called the NFL. I've never heard of it.
That's what I've been told.
I've never heard of it.
I can neither confirm or deny its existence.
So we are going to move the pre-race poll to 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. I say Pacific first because this is the time zone I live in. 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, and we're just going to give that a shot because apparently this NFL thing, people like to watch it. I don't know. Is that on Netflix or is it a series or something?
It will be on Netflix on Christmas Day this year. We will have a couple installments on Netflix then.
Okay. So. Okay, perfect. Well, so 9 a.m. East or noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, pre-race poll, bring a beverage. I'll bring my NA beer. I'm grinding through this last month of sobriety before my kid's born. Actually, not that hard. I thought it was going to be harder.
No NA cider? Nothing along those lines?
They do have NA cider. Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Is it called apple juice or is it
actually
it tastes like cider?
I put apple juice in a soda stream and I just and that's how I get my NA cider. Yeah.
Well, at least next year during the pre-race poll, you can drink out of a sippy cup and all will be right in the world.
Well, I just have a bunch of bottles, so I'll just drink out of those.
Best of luck to all of you, our loyal Stay Green listeners. Again, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, retweet, share, repost, whatever the hell they're calling it these days, and continue to circulate. Tune in to the pre-race poll on Sunday, where Chris will have a little bit more data at his disposal and an ability to share a lot of updated numbers and in terms of where we're going in slightly more liquid markets. But most importantly, with a Ty Gibbs head-to-head matchup ticket in your pocket over the 22 of Joey Logano come Sunday afternoon, we'll see you at the window.